Good morning, May 1st, 2025, in-house transportation, returning to work, markup and discussions on S-123 miscellaneous motor vehicle law. And we have Damian from our council in the chair. We also have BMV, and our goal for this morning is to work on the real ID, non-real ID portion, and then on the window tinting, and then inspection changes, rules, pieces, and the ATV part. That would pretty much everything that's left that's open as it the current status of S-123. So good morning, Damian. And I was hoping you could start with sort of a remind and get my thoughts straight on sort of 30,000 foot view on what the Senate has sent us to trying to accomplish in sections 15, 16, 17, and 18. Kind of at a 30,000 reminder, and then I'll ask the DMV to remind us of their concerns, and then we will go back and forth with questions for either one and make sure that we are ready to decide any changes or pieces that we would make in those sections.
Great. For the record, I'm Damian Leonard from the Office of Legislative Counsel. So Section 15 provides for it basically allows someone who holds an operator's license to renew it early and then prorate the cost of the new license based on the number of years left on their current license. So let's imagine I got a new license, my birthday's in January, so let's imagine I got a new license in January. This would allow me to renew the license early. Let's say I did it next year and I have a 4-year license. So I would prorate. So you round down to the number of full years remaining. So let's say I did it 15 months after I get it. So I've got 2 years and 9 months left. I'd be able to take 2 years cost off the cost of a new 4-year license, but I'd be able to go from that date 4 years out on my license. So it's basically an early renewal. So changing the period when you renew. And I see a question already.
Just to clarify, it's 4 years from the date that you renew, or is it like
it expires on the next birthday? So
it's not actually 4 years. It's like 3 years plus the difference
between
your birthday and the current.
Right. So with current licenses, I think it's up to 60 days ahead of time that you can renew, or maybe it's 30 days and it's up to 6 months. So let's say again.
Sorry.
Identify. So Deputy Commissioner DMV, it's 6 months before your renewal date.
Yeah. So
that's exactly the info we're looking for. Thank you very much. We just got the first time you got to let us know who we are.
So again, let's say I currently if I renewed 3 months ahead of my birthday, I would be able to it would expire on my birthday and I get a 4-year license. So 4 years from my next birthday, it would expire. So let's say my birthday is March 1st, and I renew in December, and my license is going to expire March 1 of 25. I get a 4-year license. The new one will expire March 1 of 29. Does that make sense? Even if I renew it like 35 or 45 days ahead of that March 1, it starts from that next birthday and then goes 4 years.
But what if my birthday just happened like April 1st?
And you were to renew now?
I were to renew for a 4-year license under this early renewal. Would it be?
I think the way that I read this, and I'll look to see if the department agrees with me, since they would be enforcing the law. But the way I read this is, so yeah, let's say your birthday was in April and you renew anytime, like as soon as this becomes effective, I think you would be looking at from April of 26, 4 years. Does that work with your reading?
That's correct.
Yeah, so that's how they read it as well. So yeah, so in other words, you'd be April of 20 30, I think. 26, 27, 28. Yep, still counting on my fingers. That's how early we are in the morning, folks.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. I think
yeah.
I had it the opposite way, so that's helpful to understand.
Yeah.
That would round down for 4 years rather than round up.
Yeah. And then, yeah, and the prorating rounds down, but the
time
expiration date goes from your next birthday.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, so that's important to keep in mind. So the prorating is designed like that to keep you from being able to like game the system.
Yeah.
By doing
Yeah.
constant renewals and getting a discount for like that portion of a year. The actual expiration date wouldn't change from the current system, which is 2 or 4 years from your next birthday.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
2 or 4 years in the next trip.
Hmm.
So also just, so in this section of the bill, we've sort of defined, hey, you can do that early renewal, and here's how here's how it's priced. Because today, while you can do 6 months, the cost is the same. There's no refund for doing it early. Here, you would sort of get that sort of refund, and then you pay it back, I guess.
You do get a prorating, but just like with the current license, if you're within that last year,
Yeah.
there's no discount.
Yeah.
So you have to be more than a year out to see any discount, because it takes, so if you have 2 years and 7 months left on your license, it only counts that 2 years.
Right. But today, you can only do it 6 months, so there's no prorating at all.
None.
Okay, thank you.
How many times can I? How
There's-
many times can I currently ask to renew it, and how many times, or renew it early, and how many times would I be able to renew it?
So,
early?
well, right now it's, you get into that final 6 months and you can renew. Just one time. The early renewal here does not set a limit on the number of renewals. The only discouragement is the prorating scheme that I talked about, which doesn't give you the benefit for anything except for the whole year's remaining. So, you don't get 2 years and 7 months worth of your license off. You only get 2 years off the cost of it. So, that said, there's nothing that would prevent you from, say, this takes effect July 1, early renewing this coming July, and then deciding next year that you want to early renew again. There's nothing that would prevent someone from doing that. Say you knew you had like you were going to be overseas for a few years or something like that for a job or a fellowship or an internship, something like that. And you could do that, but there wouldn't be a money advantage to doing it. It would probably end up costing you a little extra. So, but
And this driver's license that I'm looking to renew is a federal real ID.
this is all licenses. So it's both the operator's license, which is Real ID compliant, and the operator's privilege card, which is not Real ID compliant.
And on this license that's real ID compliant, it has male, female, and X.
Yeah, that's my understanding. It's currently,
When I renew, if I choose an early renewal, it will continue to have that.
right, you can identify your gender and have that gender marker, or identify your gender marker and have that marker put on the license under the current law.
So this idea is May 7th, and I'm not a federal, so we can't change the federal law. That 3 sections, that federal compliant real ID, still get me on an airplane unless some other changes come from the federal.
Unless there's something that changes at the federal level that invalidates real IDs that don't meet certain standards, which we couldn't control anyway.
Okay.
That should still work to get you into a federal building, to get you onto an airplane, but that is all under federal control. There's nothing we can do. We control what they do in Washington, DC on this. But we can change renewal schedule or the length of time that licenses are valid for and things like that.
And in many types of rule changes, whatever the term grandfather or whatever, I don't know exactly what the term would be, to usually wait till the expiration of that. It's good until that expiration date, and then potentially whatever new requirements
Right.
go on the renewal of that time.
Yeah. So
Most of the time, they could potentially change it even for the ones that exist right now, but generally something like that would go until the expiration date.
yeah, typically, the new laws don't have retroactive effect, perspective.
Oh.
And so, if you have, the terminology varies by area of law and land use. We would call it a vested right. For example, you got a permit to build a building before they changed the zoning regulations. You have a vested right
That's the.
under that permit. And in this case, I'm not sure that that's the right term. But it's the same sort of idea. You get an ID, it's valid. When you go to renew it, if the requirements have changed, you'll have to comply with any new requirements. So let's say the federal government requires new documentation, or they change the types of gender markers that are allowed, or that sort of thing. And this can all, this can change back and forth depending on the administration, depending on Congress. Then if you want to continue to get a real ID, compliant ID, you'll have to comply with whatever the requirements are that we as a state are required to comply with by federal law. So the early renewal piece in here essentially allows folks to renew under current requirements, assuming they don't change before the effective date of this bill. So that is essentially what this does, and it allows you to get a compliant license now and then see what happens in Washington, DC.
A renewed compliant license, in fact, it's already compliant.
Right.
There's nothing new about it other than the expiration date.
Right.
Everything else is the same.
We already have,
You still go through the same process. If something were to come up during a renewal, it would come up through whatever normal process of renewing is.
right,
But
you
you
still have,
driver's license.
yes,
So they find out you have a warrant or something, that's totally different.
I don't-
know what the process on renewals is, but nothing changes except the expiration
the
date.
renewal process is the same. So if you're going to need to get a new photo, you get a new photo.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for. And. Representative.
Sorry.
Nope, I'm good
Okay.
for now.
So just regarding how long a license can be renewed for, like right now, you can renew for up to 4 years, is that right?
Yeah, it's 2 or 4 year licenses right
Okay.
now.
And are we looking at any language in here about looking at to an 8-year?
So that is proposal in Representative Hedrick's bill, which I can't remember the number. 351, thank you. Yeah, I started at 304 and started reading up, so I just completely missed it. But yeah, so 351 proposes to go to an 8-year term, which is the maximum allowed under the Real ID law.
Okay.
Our state currently has a 2-year and 4-year term. There are some states, I think, that have longer terms, but I don't know. I haven't done a full look at other states' requirements. I know Real ID law requires that that the term of the license be not more than 8 years. So that's the way that law was written, was to comply with the maximum possible term under the existing law.
And do we have an opportunity to add in, kind of take that idea and add it into the DMV bill? If the committee were supportive of that, or is it kind of,
Well,
Question you should
yeah.
check that.
okay?
yeah.
Trying to direct my questions.
So ultimately, it's the will of the committee based on the testimony you hear. And then, of course, with these things, you want to look at, there's always policy questions about, protecting the rights of individuals, administration of it. Is it going to will there be time required to implement? Things like that, cost. So the 351 does have sort of a roughed out pricing scheme that's basically just taking the current pricing scheme and extending it out. But that's something that, you'd want to look at. So there's, from a theoretical standpoint, there's nothing that prevents you from putting that language in. But, it requires the committee's agreement and, just thinking about the various issues that go into it. Making sure that 351 either addresses those or that you address those in the bill.
Yeah, my question's probably to the DMV, and so today you can do the 6 months. I'm just sort of wondering, is it in the system? So when the person who's processing my application sort of says, okay, you can do it now, or if it was 7 months, is it the person processing that knows the rule, or is it within the system? That's sort of one question. And then two, if we were to go ahead and implement this, what would be the process to start that? Because there is some discussion about implementing this not on July 1st, but on passage. So just sort of the nuts and bolts on how the agency would do this.
So currently, it's a manual process. The person would have to know, calculate the 6 months themselves. It'll be built into our system once that rolls out in November. If we were to change any of that right now, we've already done the programming phase of our project and we're into testing now. So if we push the project out further, add more costs to reprogram and then implement more testing.
Reprogramming, I'm sorry.
Just change the
Reprogramming,
6 months to
If we were to change it to
4 years, whatever, yeah, in the system. That you're not using yet, but you're already testing.
right, yes, that, yes. The 8 years I thought we were done. If we were to change it to 8.
No, we're just talking about the early, I'm on the early.
I just got confused there.
I'm on the early renewal, that's all, yeah. So today you can go 6 months, and my question was, is it the person behind the
Yes,
thing that knows 6 months and they look and they go, oh yeah, you can do it, it's 5 months, 28 days.
future state will be
Or-
programmed.
What's that, in the future, it'll be in the system that sort of give you a red X and say, no, you're too early. So, so if we were to do it on passage, you would then, until the system is done, and you may need, if this is already in the system under testing, you'd have to change that date.
Right,
But you would have to just inform all the operators and say, or all the people
right.
at the thing saying, hey, this is the new rule.
And it would require a manual override for every single room done by a supervisor to change the expiration date.
So
Change the expiration date.
So it's a completely, upon passage, this is a completely new process behind the scenes until the rollout in November. So we would need a supervisor to override the expiration date for an early renewal every single time.
Because it doesn't allow you to do it today.
Correct. But it can be built for it.
It's almost like I want you to put you in a chair right up next to the, so we got
Okay.
questions for both. I was intending to, that's definitely why we need you here to make sure we understand that.
It's manual as far as the 6 months. It's up to the person to say, oh, you're 4 days early, you can't do it yet. But when it's issued, then you'd have to override that.
Yeah, currently you have to cancel the current license and then add a new license.
Yeah.
And you have to change the issue date and expiration because those are all built in based on current language and statute. So our 2 and 4 year license in the 6 months prior to renewing. All of that would need to be done manually because you'd have to cancel, start a new license, change the expiration date. To coincide
Okay.
with it.
I guess they get it.
Representative Collins, or should- Commissioner Collier? We got plenty of. I would suggest that.
Andrew Collier, Commissioner DMV. Just so in short, it is going to be a continuation of a manual process, but it's going to be, as we explained in Senate, it's almost gonna just be each one-off situation, we're just gonna have to handle it. Until and even when the new system comes out, it will be a small adjustment, which we don't know the exact timeline on when that will be programmed in. Like, yeah, it's gonna be a manual process, so you just have to kind of internally set up that standard, I guess.
Yeah.
And then, which won't kind of take long, but it will just be a very hands-on
Okay,
manual process.
thank you.
Are you-
Yes.
So I guess I'd ask a question. So if we have a process like this in 13 or, how many, 9 locations or 13, okay, I don't know exactly how many. The chances of somebody coming into renewal, at least in the early going, to get different levels of treatment than where they're at in education and training, to everything, at least initially, and it's not that that matters about what the policy is or not, but there's gonna be some inconsistency when people approach the windows based on each individual person that's handling the transaction, potentially.
Potentially, we hope not, we hope that we can educate, have a little bit of a buffer there, that we can educate the staff. Not saying that we won't have some hiccups along the way, but our intention is to educate the staff and train up. So that we don't, the customer facing part won't be affected. You know, we can handle it.
Well, there's some very difficult testimony about the more interactions that are forced in that area and whatnot, that the inconsistencies and the treatment of that person coming to seek this renewal, they already testified that there's some significant concerns about that and that inconsistency and whatnot, which is where I guess I was touching on. It's an uncomfortable spot, but part of the day-to-day life. And I certainly, if the Modernization Act come December, most of them are not understanding in December, this is available entirely on the internet through your MyDMV account. Is that true? That it would be, no matter which way, whether it's the current law that you're setting up for or potential change, people can would be able to renew online on their MyDMV account, my DMV account. But we're going to have potentially some stretch between possibly passage and November's rollout. That could have some hiccups.
That was my question. So this has to be done in person. You can't do it online.
Right now, it would need to be done until
Yeah.
November.
And what's an override entail, just like code?
Yeah,
Like what's-
supervisor have to verify the information, but they
So-
put the new expiration date in.
So, sorry.
I'm just trying to think like timeline. Is that like a minute, 7 minutes? You know?
It's also,
Depends on how many people we have coming in.
Yeah, I mean, just for your standard override,
It
yeah,
shouldn't take too long, but
yeah.
we'd also have.
and based on the testimony that we heard, that's a second interaction on an area that they're already concerned about those interactions. Okay? That's not helpful, but it's not, it's what the situation is. I'm not, that's not a fair judgment for you to say that. I just, in response to the testimony, and what I heard is that a manual process that not takes one interaction, it takes 2 interactions in order to be able to go through this. I want to make sure that's understood in terms of whatever education outreach or wherever we go with that, that part of what we heard in the testimony, for that we not have as many of those interactions as possible, but that doesn't mean that we will or won't do any part of it. I just particularly reread some of the posted testimony that was supplied to the committee in the last night, and that was a reaction. And what I'm hearing is it's not just one interaction, it's 2. And that is a concern in the testimony that we received. So anyway, was there a hand, Representative Allen?
I guess, I would say consider the alternative, So I think that's kind of where we are. And, we're living in a world that we would, many of us would prefer not to be living in, with things changing. But, I think protecting people's rights it is the right thing to do here. However we do that, even if it's, an imperfect experience, I think I would support passage. I don't know if we're at a point where we're talking about that yet, just putting that out there.
I think the first one would probably be if before the earlier.
And that's where we're trying to get through the
Yeah.
information in terms of what we can do.
Yeah.
And I am All I'm doing is suggesting to make sure that that's very clear. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that is or isn't where we're gonna go. If it were, my suggestions would be that if it were the perfect world, November would be May first. The November Modernization Act rolling across the whole thing would make in some ways it easier. That doesn't mean it makes it that we shouldn't do it. It just makes it that it would be smoother. That's all I'm saying. It would be smoother, but that doesn't make it mean that it can't happen.
Right.
That doesn't mean that it can't happen. I'm not,
None of this is ideal.
so. We're gonna work through it until we figure out what we're gonna do. I'll even answer the question you had earlier. This is I'm not even have a clear plan of what we should or should not do and where we should go. This is in my book, very much a wide open discussion that we may or may not decide today. I just want to be clear about as many sides of it as possible. I'm not set on what we are or aren't going to do and what will or won't be proposed for language. And that does take time, but I want to make sure we get it right. Representative Wood?
I have a question for the DMV. So could you just remind the committee how much, so prior to being able to renew your driver's license or your registration online, that process versus the process now that consumers can do these renewals online, how much has that online ability decreased the in-person transactions at the DMV, just like roughly?
I don't have numbers, but quite a bit. You know, we've been doing online renewals for registrations for quite a while. But yeah, the foot traffic obviously would decrease.
So just like knowing that there's been a little bit of, the traffic has alleviated a little bit in the DMV offices because of that online option. If we were to implement a law like this, which is gonna kind of muddy the waters in terms of how efficient your people are able to work through, maybe that's mitigated by the fact that some of the traffic has gone down in the last couple of years because of online transactions. Is that a?
Obviously, you have to come back in for a picture. When your pictures due, and waves. Yeah.
And that was part of the manual process too, is we're gonna have to identify. What people want there, obviously, but if your picture needs to be redone as well at the same time.
Yeah.
We have to do that, because right now it's that cadence is set. So this kind of puts you out of that cadence a little bit, so we also have to, in that manual process, identify the picture.
Sorry. I think we're gonna go into the rest of the sections. I go back to Damien and tell us make sure that we're clear on what 16, 17, and 18 do. Of course, there's more questions on the process and or what's in the bill right now.
Yeah, so 15, like I said, is the early renewal provision for driver's licenses and operators privilege cards. 16 is early renewal for non-driver IDs. 17.
Is a non-driver ID still a real ID by federal standards?
Yeah, so.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah. I'm seeing heads nodding over here. So yeah, you can have a real ID or a non-real ID compliant non-driver identification. Yeah, so you don't have a license to operate a motor vehicle, but it is a state ID that can either comply with or not comply with the federal real ID requirements. Chloe, we're gonna hire you. Pay is better.
Still the opportunity down here.
Oh.
How much hair you pull out though?
Yeah. When I started this job, hair cascading down my shoulders. Yeah. And then, first end of the session, it just All fell out. Yeah. Oh, if only that was true. Someday when we're not on the record, we can talk about that experience in my family. Sure, I can commiserate with some of the other gentlemen in the room here. So, no, I'm not naming names. So 16 is the non-driver ID early renewal. 17 is basically stating the intent of the General Assembly that the commissioner would ensure that any individual who is unable to or does not wish to comply with the requirements of the Real ID Act, which really gets to documentation you need to provide to get the ID. The biggest one being proof of citizenship or legal right to be within the country. They can be informed of the option of, or that they be informed of the option of obtaining an operator's privilege card or non-driver ID pursuant to the various statutory provisions. And then again, non-driver ID, there's a real ID aspect to that and also a non-real ID option. So this is basically saying that if someone says, I don't have my birth certificate, or I don't want to provide my birth certificate, and I don't have a passport, or I don't want to provide that, or whatever other proof, then the DMV would inform them that, well, we can't give you the real ID compliant one, but you could get an operator's privilege card, or you could get a non-real ID compliant, non-driver ID.
Yes, so what's different than what is today? What does this do other than say you can do it?
I am not sure that this changes existing practice, so much as just stating that it's the intent of the General Assembly that that practice continue, but
That's true. We currently.
Yeah, so this doesn't change anything or, yeah, okay.
How do you offer those options now? You use it on the internet or is it on part of a handout? Does it just pop up as a poster?
On our application, it's on the website. It's offered at the counter.
And you have a list of what you have to, I mean, you might not need some documents, but you have to have, you know, mail or whatever.
What's required for real ID, and if you don't want a real ID, you don't have documentation for a real ID, which you can provide to
Got
get a regular.
Okay, yeah, I'm not quite sure what this does other than says it already exists.
So it's the DMV's testimony that section 17 is a reaffirmation of your current practice.
That's
Okay. Well, I guess I could say very simply, would everybody agree with section 17? Is there anything wrong with 17 or
There's
is
nothing wrong with it. It's just on principle. Do we start putting everything in statute or bills to say what we're already doing?
we already do this?
I mean, I'm fine with it, but it's just, it's
Does it
like,
need an entire section to say?
you don't really need this in the bill.
Sure.
Those aren't. But yeah,
One sentence.
Are you saying that's a yes, we need it?
I'm
Or you're
okay.
saying?
Yeah, I think it might be necessary to take it out now.
yeah.
It would cause us more headaches than it's worth. Does anybody else have an opinion they want to offer on section 17? Representative what?
I mean, just conjecture, but I think it, no harm done in reaffirming what is already current practice, particularly given some of the concerns about federal policies changing and just like making sure that this is offered to people as an alternative. I think I think there's a benefit there.
When I read it, it makes it sound like they don't already do it. I guess if I was one that was already doing it and I'm getting this that says you shall do it, and I would kind of want my part to say, but I already do this. So it makes it sound like I'm not doing this already today, and I am, but Representative Thomas?
I guess it just seems like there's a number of sections that we've approved that do the same thing. That just codify into statute things that the DMV is already doing, so it seems similar to that.
For about 8 sections in here, we did that.
Yeah, so it just seems like something we've been doing in this bill, and I support doing it again on this thing, which is also important, so.
Interesting. take, because I think that we just did a section that said,
I guess the only kind maybe amendment I would ask to your part is to add just one word. Continue.
Yeah, that was actually the,
So just continue. So then it's like, all right, no, people would say, all right, they're not doing it, they're gonna continue to do what they do. I would feel better with the continue.
Do you-
Continue to ensure.
Instead
Yeah.
of shall continue.
Yeah,
Shall
yeah.
continue to ensure.
I would actually say, so it shall ensure that, and then down on line 11, that it's continue to be informed of the option. So that the shall ensure is the duty of the commissioner to make sure that his staff continue doing the action.
I just want to make a point that they're already doing this.
Yeah. So that's a small, but, easy tweak. Yeah.
No, thank you.
Representative Keaton?
I'm sorry to beat a dead horse. Sorry to beat a dead horse.
That's your,
Sorry to beat, I'm sorry.
I don't think the horse is dead yet.
He's no.
So, from a perspective of a board member, what we have, what I'm hearing is you're already doing this. It's already policy or procedure, I should say. It's not necessarily policy, it's already procedure. And to Chloe's point, that hopefully we don't get into, and the DMV bill, as I understand it, was developed mostly through the department. I don't think that, personally, I don't think that the committee needs to reaffirm what current procedure is in statute. Is that reasonable? I mean, and I don't know why you'd want to put it in. We're fine. I'm not going to change anything, but just a comment. If you're on a board, you don't make those decisions. You let you guys do it, and we sort of know about it. And you don't have to put it in statute, but just a comment. What killed everything right there. didn't it?
Well, no, like I said, and that's why I wanted to move it along and just put in the continue with the language that Damian said. I'm fine with that, but with that language, I mean, I don't know if you need a motion, but I'm fine.
Is there any concern with the continue in the language? There is a concern that we shouldn't do it at all. Not there a concern with the word continue.
Good.
From my perspective, I guess I would say that we'll put in the word continue, and if we want to. And then if I would say that with that adjustment, would we be okay with section 17? We can put up 1, 2, 3, 4. We can put, you can have your no, it looks like you in the other direction, so we're going to go ahead and say that with the change, that 17 is gonna stay, 17 is gonna stay for now. For now, no, 17 is in, we're saying.
Yeah.
17 is in. I'm not saying we're done yet either, so to get back to the, I guess we're on 17. I have a question on the renewal language in 16 and whatnot. Unlimited renewals for 15 and 16. What's the difference if it's the ability to unlimited renewal right now versus when you hit the modernization piece and it's online? What 16 is that I'm sorry, 17 more. I'm sorry, I was on 17. I should ask this question before we did that, but I just understand what's the difference between now and after implementation on, I guess you commented on 15, 16 and 17. What are the differences? I guess we already established on 15 and 16, they don't have to come to the counter anymore. 15 for now, they're going to have to come to the counter. On 17, you still have to come to the counter then because there's actual documentation involved versus it's a renewal online. 17, you would still have to come into the.
17 is the one we just said is okay.
That's
Right.
what
15
What I
and
meant is-
16 are the early. Renewal.
17 implies that you're actually, you have to come into the counter. You're at the counter anyway,
They're
right?
getting a real ID.
If you're talking about documentation, you probably have to be at the counter, actually.
Well, the way I would look at it, 17 and 18 would go, because 17 would probably be tied into the outreach. They would be informed when they go on. If they don't do this, then they could go to, option C. So I think the outreach would tie into 17 theoretically, if they did it online. This is the way I look at it. Or at least part of the outreach, right? They would be notified then if they didn't provide it, they could, follow the right. If you,
All right.
that makes sense.
Yeah, outreach is also something that we currently do.
Yeah.
So the DMV did testify earlier that 18, they're not opposed to, is that correct? That you do outreach as part
Same
of?
as 17, we, the reduced fees are for those getting a non-driver on SSI or SSDI. Those
Yeah.
are reduced fees. We already do that.
Which one are we on now? I thought 17, you said we were good with
18.
adding, we're on 18.
I'm gonna move to 18, I guess,
Yeah.
and yes. My bad,
That's
I had a question that should have been asked earlier, but I'm good. We're gonna move to 18. Is there maybe Damien could comment on 18 and then we'll go to.
Yeah, so 18 is basically just saying that on or before November 15th, DMV has to develop and implement public education and outreach campaign to inform Vermont residents about their rights to obtain an operator's license, operator's privilege card, non-driver ID, right to self-attest with respect to gender marker on the operator's license, privilege card, or non-driver ID, and reduced fees that are available to individuals who meet certain requirements. Currently, the two that I'm aware of are the reduced fees for the certain veterans, and then reduced fees for non-driver IDs for individuals on SSI and SSDI. In this bill, it was proposing for driver's license. Current law allows a reduced fee for a non-driver ID for individuals on SSI and SSDI. This bill proposed extending that to driver's licenses. You have taken that out. And in the next draft, you see it will not be there. But
So on
Yeah.
3, it says you'll have outreach for the reduced fees that exist or might exist from this bill. But not all the ones we talked about because we took some out.
And we also have reduced fees for DCF, moving out of foster care. Right? Or we will after that.
oh, right,
Yeah.
yep, that's the other one that's
Yeah.
being added.
But does that need to be publicized? Because that's through DCF's case management work. Anyway,
Well,
that's not named here anyway, but
Yeah,
None of them
that
specifically
would
are
be in
named,
the
right?
education.
Reduced fees that are available to meet certain requirements.
Public education outreach.
And this, I think, for the public, it's fair to say you already do outreach for things. You have stuff on your website. I mean, however you do it. And that this just says, hey, you got to continue to do that. And if there are any changes that have come through on the DMV bill or somewhere else, you'll have to do those too.
Yes, if you don't mind me asking a clarifying question, actually, I would just put one for Damien. Under 18, where it says individuals' rights, if I'm not mistaken, an operator's license is a privilege to operate in the state of Vermont. I just don't want to get caught up when you're doing outreach, that we're saying rights, because it's a privilege.
so that should probably be individuals' ability to obtain or,
Yeah. That's a good point.
yeah.
Yeah.
So. Okay,
I think it's 18 open and it won't change just like 17. But it's
Wow.
not open, updating.
you okay with an individual's right to self-attest with respect to gender marker?
What does the law say now in regards to any other piece? Does it say the right to self-attest or does it say some other, whatever it says in other pieces of law, I guess is what you'd have to go back and, or I'd ask you to go back and check.
I'm just trying to think like when you when you apply to vote, register to vote, is that like a self-attest? Or no, I'm just trying, like when we self-attest, does it say?
What does it say? We're
Yeah,
trying to
what
be
does it say?
consistent.
There's, examples out there. I just don't know what the word is.
Pulling it up
Whatever it is,
now.
we should be consistent. We shouldn't be trying to make a new
Yeah.
term there. That's way beyond just transportation.
So,
Want to be following and not making any mistakes. I see a nod, so I'll take that as an agreement. We're gonna want to make sure that what the commissioner brought up for a point is also considered in number two.
I just didn't.
That we make sure the right language of what it is, that what is the right.
But it would have been incredibly important.
Wow, if you read that, that's a big statement.
Thank you guys, that was important.
I'm just looking at the current law to see if it even speaks to that issue or if that's just something that's done.
All right, well then, let's see where we are in terms of. You don't have to do research, just like math in public, you don't have to do your research in piece in public for us. We,
I don't see anything in the statute on that, but I may just have missed it.
Reads all right, and this one's right, self-attest or not self-attest, I think that's
Yeah.
different from. You know, the first thing we talked about.
we're gonna take a break in a little bit, we'll let them dig into it a little bit
Yeah.
more, but overall, the concept is, at least we can look at it and then, but overall, the testimony from the DMV and from it is that this is something they're already do, and we just want to confirm the wording on that part, so we'll come back to that after the break and just make sure that it lines up with our consistency, and then we can take a look at it again.
From what I can see, it's not inconsistent. So,
What does, I gotta go, so we'll go back to 15 and 16 are still, we know where we're going on 18. 15 and 16, whether there's other pieces that people want to propose or not propose or change. What's the difference between unlimited renewals between now and before we roll out the Modernization Act? Do we want unlimited renewals in the next? Can we, is there an impact on your work, the difference between unlimited renewals before the Modernization Act and unlimited renewals after?
Yes, so I've already, so I've explained the extra work it would take.
What
Current
happens
language
after?
would mean that somebody could come in today, renew, come in another month and renew, and do it monthly if they want to. There's no limit currently.
What happens after rollout? What's the difference? What, the computer rolls
It's a
out a
little more
trans,
streamlined, but
you don't have to touch it, they're doing it online? I mean, or not, what's,
There were still, I think there's the part also with printing licenses as well, so we talk monthly, it's another cog in the system, that does cost money, you know, where it's covered in registration fees, but it's another area that is I think limiting this portion so we can keep it streamlined and not have, I don't know someone purposely, but I know there's people out there that like to, you know, want to come in and just because they can renew monthly.
is it responsible for us to have unlimited renewals? We don't allow it today. Is it responsible to leave it?
And I
Unlimited?
just don't really see something going in, I just don't really see that happen, Now, theoretically. I just don't know what the benefit. Be.
Yeah, to that point, there's actually a financial disincentive to do that. I mean,
Yeah.
we'd essentially be making up, like, my rough math would be like $20 on each additional on each transaction. So if anything, it's a tiny trickle of additional revenue. It's hard for me to imagine the case where someone could do that. And if they did, we'd get a little bit of extra money from it because you'd be losing money on those transactions. As the person renewing, not as the state.
I would just sort of add to that, but if people started to do it, it would really reflect on how well the DMV is and how welcoming it is that people are willing to go there that often. But I think most people will decide to do it once and then, you know, I don't imagine they'll continue to do it. There's no advantage.
The only compromise, you know, if we did want to pursue this, would be to put a limit on the amount of renewals to one up until November when the system's in place, and then obviously there's no burdensome. And then just leave it open-ended, but if you need to go down that road, but if there is like major heartburn, we would do one renewal up until November, and then it's, if you want to renew whenever, next day. Because it's all online, but. Yeah, I just don't know that people are gonna be, I think the people that are gonna be interested in doing this are gonna be doing it as soon as this is passed. Or close to.
At one time.
Did you have your hand up? Did you have your hand up? Either one? I'm not sure if either of you,
Yeah.
which one, either one of
I
you
did a
will
little bit earlier with it.
I'm sorry.
I don't know if this pertain. This has a lot to do with the gender identification, right?
Yes.
What if I change my mind? What if I go a few months down the road and I don't feel like I'm that type of gender before and now I want to change it? I'm just, has that been thought of? I don't know if that.
You can change it.
I would-
Yeah, but.
I guess I would point that in that, this direct, you, currently now you would, I understand that question, if you want to change your ID, you would not be able to unless it was 6 months before your birthday, right? And you'd only.
The next time I update my ID, I could,
You could change.
yeah.
But under-
A new photo, update the gender designation on my ID.
To change your gender,
Yeah.
just get a replacement.
Okay,
Oh, but not, okay, but not renew or change the expiration date.
Just get a replacement with the same.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't change right now.
you do pay for the replacement card, but it's not a
Let
full.
them answer the question. Let me answer the question. You guys answer his question.
Yeah.
You can to clarify then, you could change it. You could change your gender or that blocks as often as you'd like. You have to pay a fee for changing the license, but we do this like as long as you'd like. That answers your question. Just got the floor if you want it.
No, I'm good. I got it.
And so you could change your gender, but you could change your address. And, so that would be the reason you would, typically do it, yeah. And pay the fee, okay.
And if so you can renew your license, it's many, you just can't change the expiration date. Okay, but you can renew your license. Does any of these implicate any other registrations or expansion or renewals, any other pieces that you want that are open-ended or that in this change that impact any other DMV related?
As far as the sections.
If we go forward, these sections, they have impact on anything else that you see? Any other? What are we opening up for a new process? We have unlimited renewals now, is what you just said, in effect. You're unlimited, not renewals, unlimited changes, unlimited updates, right?
Replacements.
Unlimited replacements, that's the term, okay. You have unlimited replacements today. The difference, well, those are manual because you have to come in to do this, you can't do that online today. So unlimited replacements exist now. And they would continue to exist in the same manner. Just
I'm a little naive. Do gender markers exist right now?
Yes.
All of them? Okay.
all right, I think we're gonna take a break and we'll come back or.
No, I was just gonna make a
We'll come back at
motion,
10:20.
that's what we're waiting for.
We'll come back